All right, let's dive right into this explainer and finally solve that deeply frustrating mystery of why your extremely expensive espresso gear isn't giving you consistent results. Look, you bought the machine, you upgraded the grinder, you bought the fancy scale and all the leveling tools, but your shots are still totally hit or miss. Well, this explainer is going to replace those brittle, rigid procedures you've been trying to follow with an adaptable, living model you can actually think with. So, here is our flight plan for today. We're going to start by shifting from guessing to operating. Then, we'll break down the 4 espresso variables, learn how to read the Espresso Compass, master the coffee puck itself, evaluate our beans, water, and equipment, and finally, establish a bulletproof daily dial-in protocol. Okay, Section 1, stop guessing, start operating. You know the exact feeling I'm talking about, right? Tuesday's shot was absolute perfection, Wednesday's was a sour, undrinkable disappointment, and Thursday felt fine, but you honestly have zero idea why. If you've ever stood there and blamed yourself or your technique for these wild swings, it's just because you don't have a model to think with yet. We are going to shift your mindset from merely following a static, lifeless recipe to actually operating your espresso machine like an advanced instrument panel.
And this perfectly illustrates why copying some random recipe you found online fails the moment a single condition changes in your kitchen. A procedure just tells you to, say, grind at setting 2 for exactly 30 seconds. That is a completely brittle, open-loop system. It assumes your beans, your water, and your room humidity literally never change. A model, on the other hand, is completely adaptable. It allows you to diagnose the shot by reading its physical signs, predict the direction of your result, adjust exactly one variable, and confirm. It gets you to that perfect cup in 3 deliberate moves instead of 3 weeks of just fishing around in the dark.
Because the crucial point here is that there are exactly 5 invisible drifts ruining your shots on a daily basis. And if you aren't measuring them, you can't fix them. You're basically just playing the lottery with your morning caffeine. We're talking about bean rest, dose mass scatter, temperature drift, scale lag, and water composition. For instance, if an 18-gram dose accidentally wanders to 18.3 grams just because you aren't using a highly precise scale, that completely changes your shot's resistance. And the beans themselves change internally as they age. These 5 invisible drifts are exactly why a procedure fails and why an operating model is absolutely non-negotiable.
Moving on to Section 2. The 4 espresso variables. Now that we understand why we're crashing, let's build your new instrument panel by defining the 4 gauges every single espresso shot lives inside. First up is the dose. You absolutely must pin your dose to within half a gram of your basket's target size. Why is this so strict? Because a wandering dose changes the puck's headspace inside the portafilter and totally ruins your consistency. If you overstuff an 18-gram basket with 19 grams, the coffee swells up when wet, kisses the metal shower screen, and the water is suddenly forced to carve these invisible channels through the stressed cake. Weigh it to the 1/10 of a gram and just lock it in.
Next, we have the ratio. The ratio is basically your core recipe, directly controlling the strength and the extraction depth of your espresso. So if you put 18 grams of dry coffee in and pull 36 grams of liquid out, that's your 1:2 ratio. We highly recommend pinning it precisely at 1:2 to start. And please, don't eyeball the volume in the cup. The crema makes the liquid density entirely unpredictable. Always measure the mass on a scale.
Then there is time. Now listen closely here. Time is a confirmation gauge. It is not a target. Meaning, you only use it to double-check if your puck's resistance is in the right 25 to 35 second ballpark before you even bother tasting it. If your shot pulls in say 12 seconds, it's going to be sour enough to curdle milk no matter what you do. Don't even taste it to figure out the flavor. Just immediately recognize you completely missed the window and adjust your settings.
Finally, we have the grind. Grind is your elastic variable, and it's the primary lever you're going to pull to manipulate extraction. A finer grind means more surface area and slower flow, which extracts more of the bean's soluble matter. A coarser grind means less surface area and faster flow. You're adjusting the grind specifically to bring your shot time into that golden band, while keeping your dose and ratio completely 100% pinned.
Section 3. Reading the Espresso Compass. All right, it's time to actually learn how to read your shots by taste, because once your time is sitting pretty in that right band, you need a map to figure out what to do next based purely on your palate.
To read the compass properly, you always need to ask yourself these 2 independent questions in this exact order. First, is it sour or bitter? And second, is it thin or heavy? You do it in this exact order because extraction defects, like bitterness, can easily mask strength defects, like heaviness.
A bitter shot will aggressively occupy your palate and literally fool your brain into thinking the body is heavy, when in reality it's thin. What's wild is that practically every bad shot you've ever pulled lives in one of these 4 quadrants. And once you map your flavor, it's actually super simple. You just move one variable in the direction of the balanced center. For example, if you land in the bottom left, so it's sour and watery, your shot is under-extracted and weak. Your compass move there is to tighten the grind to slow the water down and extract more. If you land in the top right, bitter and dense, it's over-extracted and strong, so you coarsen the grind. You move one variable, you test, and you adapt.
All right, Section 4, Mastering the Coffee Puck. We really need to achieve even resistance here, because let's be real, none of those clever compass moves matter at all if your physical foundation is totally broken.
If you're sipping a shot that tastes confusingly bitter and thin at the exact same time, you almost certainly have a channeling failure where the water just lazily took the path of least resistance. If you have uneven distribution, messy clumps, a tiny gap at the sidewall, or a lopsided tamp, pressurized water will just blast right through those weak spots. Those weak spots get violently over-extracted and bitter, while the rest of the puck gets entirely bypassed and under-extracted, which leaves the final drink horribly weak and thin.
So how do we actually spot this happening? Well, using a naked portafilter is an absolute game changer here. It instantly visualizes these invisible channeling issues by completely exposing asymmetrical flows and dry spots underneath the basket. If you look under there and see fine streamers shooting horizontally, or a bright blonde spot forming way too early, you've got a channeling problem. Now, whatever you do not tighten the grind here. That will only make channeling worse. You have to fix your puck prep by breaking up clumps and leveling your tamp first.
Section 5, Beans, Water, and Equipment. Let's zoom out a bit and look at the external inputs that happen before you even lock the portafilter into the group head.
First off, the beans. Look, using beans that are just 2 days off roast is a rookie mistake that will just spray carbon dioxide everywhere inside the basket. That creates a sour, incredibly unstable shot that literally no grind adjustment can possibly fix. You have to let them rest. The standard espresso window is usually between 7 and 21 days off roast. You've got to give that volatile gas time to escape so the puck can actually offer some stable resistance. And water chemistry is just as crucial. A lot of folks think pure distilled or reverse osmosis water is the holy grail. It is not. Pure water is mathematically aggressive. It will literally leach metals right out of your boiler and produce a totally flat, empty-tasting cup. But on the other extreme, highly mineralized tap water will coat your machine's internals with rock-hard scale and completely dull the bright acidity of your coffee. You need curated water, whether that's by buying specific bottled water or using a third-party mineral concentrate to hit that perfect extraction balance.
Section 6, the dial-in protocol. This is it, your daily operating routine. Let's tie everything we've talked about together into a concrete, actionable sequence you can run on every single new bag of coffee you bring home.
By actually following these exact steps, dialing in goes from this chaotic morning panic into a super reliable habit. You pin your dose and ratio, pull a shot, and read its taste on the compass. Then, and this is absolutely vital, you move exactly one variable. If you change 2 things at once, you learn absolutely nothing. Finally, apply the 3-iteration rule. If you fail to hit the center of the compass after 3 moves in the same direction, stop tweaking the grind. Stop and investigate upstream issues like bad water, a stale bean, or severe channeling. Once it tastes balanced, lock that recipe in a notebook and stop fiddling with it. This entire model empowers you to finally take control of the variables, rather than just crossing your fingers and hoping for a lucky pull. Espresso isn't magic, right? And it certainly isn't some mystical art form reserved only for Italian cafes. It's an observable, measurable, closed-loop system. When you use the compass, you are finally reacting to real data, not old coffee folklore. So the very next time you step up to your machine, just remember, you've got this instrument cluster now. You can diagnose any shot by taste alone. Take these tools, pin those variables, and trust the compass. But honestly, it kind of leaves you wondering. If you've been relying on pure folklore for your morning espresso, what other daily routines in your life are running on blind guesswork instead of observable data? It's time to start operating. See you next time.